In the 7th century AD, a battle was fought between the Romans and the Persians on the site where the Assyrian capital once stood. Describing the scene, the historian Gibbon wrote, "Eastward of the Tigris, at the end of the bridge of Mosul, the great Nineveh had formerly been erected. The city, and even the ruins of the city, had long since disappeared. The vacant space afforded a spacious field for the operations of the two armies." Edward Gibbon, The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, ch. 46, par. 24. Italics supplied. Even the ruins had disappeared. Nineveh had indeed become empty and void and waste. God, who reads the future, had described it perfectly. Babylon's fate was foretold with similar accuracy. In the heyday of its power, while it was still known as the marvel of nations, 2 Hebrew prophets had the audacity to announce its complete destruction. Isaiah, speaking as the mouthpiece of God, declared, "Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the shepherds make their fold there. But wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and owls shall dwell there. And her time is near to come." Isaiah chapter 13 verses 19 to 22. The prophet Jeremiah added this equally dramatic prediction, "Declare ye among the nations. Babylon is taken. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become a desolation among the nations? It shall be no more inhabited forever, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation." Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 2, 23, 39. "And Babylon shall become heaps, a dwelling place for dragons, an astonishment, and an hissing, without an inhabitant." Jeremiah chapter 51 verse 37. Notice how both prophets mentioned that the city should become deserted, without an inhabitant. This was being dangerously specific, and some of their friends may well have said to them, "Don't you think you are going a little too far? After all, Babylon is the biggest city man has ever built." But the prophets did not change their prediction. They knew it had come to them from one who knows the future as well as the past, and that time would prove it true. It did. As noted in a previous chapter, judgment, swift and terrible, came upon Babylon on the night of Belshazzar's famous feast. Thereafter, as century succeeded century, the once mighty city gradually crumbled away, its walls, palaces, and temples slowly fading from sight beneath the sands of the encroaching desert. For generations it was a lost city, with no one even knowing where it once had stood. In 1845, and again 1850, the famous archaeologist Layard explored the site, afterward describing it as follows. "Shapeless heaps of rubbish cover for many an acre the face of the land. On all sides, fragments of glass, marble, pottery, and inscribed brick are mingled with that peculiar nitrous and blanched soil, which, bred from the remains of ancient habitations, checks or destroys vegetation, and renders the site of Babylon a naked and hideous waste. Owls start from the scanty thickets, and the foul jackal skulks through the furrows." Austin H. Layard, Discoveries in the Ruins of Nineveh and Babylon, 1853, page 484. In recent years excavations have continued in this area and many remarkable finds have been made, but the ancient city remains a desolate, roofless tomb, without an inhabitant. With what amazing precision did God foretell the future in this case? He had something to say, too, about Egypt. About the year 587 BC, while the land of the pharaohs was still a power in the earth, the prophet Ezekiel was directed to say, "The word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Pharaoh king of Egypt, and prophesy against him, and against all Egypt. Speak, and say, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, Pharaoh king of Egypt, the great dragon that leeth in the midst of his rivers, which hath said, My river is mine own, and I have made it for myself." Ezekiel chapter 29 verses 1 to 3. Then the prophet uttered this astounding prediction concerning Egypt's future. "It shall be the basest of the kingdoms, neither shall it exalt itself any more above the nations, for I will diminish them, that they shall no more rule over the nations." Verse 15. More than 25 centuries have passed since then. At any moment during this long period some powerful leader might have arisen to restore Egypt's greatness and so made the prophecy false. But none did. All down the years Egypt's history has been one sorry record of subserviency, to the Romans, to the Muslim Arabs, to the French, and to the British. True, today it enjoys independence, but it is only one of many small nations and rules no territory but its own. Remarkable indeed was this vision of the future. But it was not the only one recorded by Ezekiel. God revealed to him also the fate of the once powerful seaport and naval base of Tyre. In the 6th century BC, this city, located about 40 miles north of Mount Carmel on the Mediterranean coast, wielded an immense influence throughout Asia Minor and Palestine. Its ships roamed the seas as far as Spain, and possibly England. When Jerusalem fell to the Babylonians, there was great rejoicing in Tyre. On hearing of it, Ezekiel wrote, "Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, O Tyrus, and will cause many nations to come up against thee, as the sea causeth his waves to come up. And they shall destroy the walls of Tyrus, and break down her towers. I will also scrape her dust from her, and make her like the top of a rock. It shall be a place for the spreading of nets in the midst of the sea." Ezekiel chapter 26 verses 3-5. Were the people of Tyre concerned? Not in the least. They were too busy with their commerce to bother about what some fanatical Hebrew was saying about them. What power on earth could ever capture their impregnable fortress and scrape it bare, like the top of a rock? Then came Nebuchadnezzar. For 13 years he laid siege to Tyre. So hard did his soldiers labor at the battering rams that every shoulder was peeled. Ezekiel chapter 29 verse 18. Finally, that portion of the city which had been built on the mainland fell to the invaders. But despite all their efforts, they could not capture the island, half a mile offshore. After Nebuchadnezzar's departure, many Tyrians no doubt consoled themselves that, while they had suffered great damage, their main city remained inviolate and Ezekiel's prediction had failed. But it hadn't. God is long on time. He can afford to wait. Some 240 years later, in 332 BC, another conqueror approached. This time it was Alexander the Great. With massive forces he soon subdued the rebuilt mainland city, but, like Nebuchadnezzar, he was baffled by the wide stretch of water between him and his main prize. Then he decided upon a most unusual course. Demolishing the mainland city, he literally scraped it bare, using the rubble to build a causeway 200 feet wide across the straits. At the farther end of this he erected towers and war engines and prepared for the final assault. He was now joined by the king of Cyprus, who arrived with 220 warships, and the reduction of the fortress was soon accomplished. After a 7-month siege, Tyre was taken, with fearful slaughter of the inhabitants. Alexander's mole may still be seen today. Broken pillars from the once famous city strew the beaches. Fishermen from the village of Sur spread their nets upon the bare rocks from which the dust of Tyre was scraped by the famous Greek conqueror nearly 23 centuries ago. Thus again God demonstrated the completeness of his knowledge of the future. Only someone with supernatural vision could have described Tyre's fate in such astonishingly accurate detail. One more illustration must suffice at this juncture, and this from the greatest prophet of all. While talking with his disciples in the temple one day, Jesus shocked them by saying, "You see all these buildings? I tell you this, not one stone will be left upon another, all will be thrown down." Matthew chapter 24 verse 2, NEB. When would this happen? When you see Jerusalem encircled by armies, then you may be sure that her destruction is near. Then those who are in Judea must take to the hills, those who are in the city itself must leave it, and those who are out in the country must not enter, because this is the time of retribution. Luke chapter 21 verses 20-23, NEB. Then he added this even more remarkable prediction: Jerusalem will be trampled down by foreigners until their day has run its course. Verse 24. Everything came about exactly as Jesus said. In AD 66, Roman armies attacked the city, but then withdrew, thus giving those who remembered Christ's warning a chance to escape. 4 years later, AD 70, the Romans returned, captured the city, and utterly destroyed it. In their mad search for hidden treasure and their eagerness to salvage the precious metals that flowed in molten streams from the burning buildings, they took the whole place apart, stone by stone. Then began the long period of subjection that Jesus so marvelously forecast. Century after century, Jerusalem was trampled down by foreigners, or, as the King James Version says, trodden down of the Gentiles. It was trampled by the Romans, the Muslim Arabs, the Turks. Even today, despite the existence of the new nation of Israel, the ancient city is still in the hands of foreigners, while a Mohammedan structure stands upon the site of Solomon's temple. Well, did one famous preacher write, "So long as Babylon is in heaps, so long as Nineveh lies empty, void, and waste, so long as Egypt is the basest of kingdoms, so long as Tyre is a place for the spreading of nets in the midst of the sea, so long as Israel is scattered among all nations, so long as Jerusalem is trodden underfoot of the Gentiles, so long as the great empires of the world march on in their predicted course, so long we have proof that one omniscient mind dictated the predictions of that book, the Bible, and prophecy came not in old time by the will of man. H. L. Hastings, Will the Old Book Stand? Page 19. Once this fact is established, once we know for sure that God knows the future as he does the past, our outlook upon the world and all its tumultuous happenings can never be the same. For if it is indeed true that God can declare new things before they spring forth, if, in every circumstance, every historical development, he can see the end from the beginning, there can be no reason for anxiety or despair. All we need to do is to trust his infinite knowledge, wisdom, power, and love, and leave everything to him. Thus as the gathering storm bursts upon us, our hearts may be at peace, filled with courage from above, knowing all will come right in the end. 7. Plans for eternity. Not only does God know the future, he plans for it. And the evidence of his concern for what is going to happen to this world and its inhabitants is another source of courage in these troubled times. Far back at history's dawn, when he formed the earth and made it, he created it not in vain, he formed it to be inhabited. Isaiah chapter 45 verse 18. He was thinking of its future then, and has been ever since. When it became necessary to punish the antediluvians for their wickedness, he found a righteous man and told him what he was going to do. And God said unto Noah, The end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and, behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make thee an ark. Genesis chapter 6 verses 13, 14. He foresaw the flood and made provision for the deliverance of those who wanted to be saved. Then when the flood receded and Noah and his family descended from the ark, God was still looking ahead. I will not again curse the ground, he said. Neither will I again smite any more everything living, as I have done. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Genesis chapter 8 verse 21, 22. That was when he made the first rainbow. And as Noah and his family gazed up at the glorious sight, God said to them, I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud, and I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. Genesis chapter 9 verses 13 to 15. In the next verse he says that the rainbow will ever remind him of his everlasting covenant, which suggests he was looking a long, long way ahead just then. Even today the darkest clouds make the backdrop for the most beautiful rainbows, telling us that God still cares for his creatures and that somewhere, not far away, his sun is shining. Some 3 centuries after the flood, when degeneration had again set in, God called Abram to leave the city of Ur of the Chaldees and go to Palestine to found a new nation. Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee, was the divine command. The promise followed, I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. Genesis chapter 12 verses 1 to 3. Notice again the forward look, God's knowledge of the future and his planning for it. Observe also the mingling of his overall purpose for the world with his personal purpose for Abraham. Though separate, they were completely intertwined, linking Abraham's life with God's, his plans with God's plans. Thus as he set out obediently for Canaan he found himself, before his journey's end, looking for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 10. When Abraham's great-grandson Joseph was sold as a slave into Egypt, it seemed a disaster. Yet it wasn't. It was merely a part of a divine plan, or, as we sometimes say, God's overruling providence. A few years later this same young man, now governor of Egypt, told his brothers who had done the cruel deed, Do not be distressed, or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. Genesis chapter 45 verses 5 to 8, RSV. It was the same when the time came for Israel to be delivered from Egyptian bondage. Again a plan was needed to meet a truly desperate situation, and God was ready with one. This time he needed a godly mother, a well-cared-for baby, a devoted sister, and a kindly princess, and they were all there on location, on time. Furthermore, his plans for their individual lives so blended with his eternal purpose that the upshot was the exodus and freedom for 1 million people. Centuries later, when the 70-year Babylonian captivity was drawing to a close, similar activity was in evidence. In this case even the heathen king who was to pronounce the decree of liberation was named before he was born. Isaiah tells the story, "Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him. For Jacob my servant Sake, and Israel mine elect, I have even called thee by thy name, I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me." Isaiah chapter 45 verses 1 to 4. Cyrus was the Persian king who first told the Jews they were free to return to their homeland, just 70 years after Nebuchadnezzar had taken them captive. And it was probably the aged prophet Daniel, who was at Babylon's fall the third ruler in the kingdom, Daniel chapter 5 verse 29, who brought to his attention Isaiah's 200-year-old prediction. Thus marvelously does God plan for every emergency. Not even the slightest detail is overlooked. Nothing he plans and promises ever fails to come to pass. Joshua chapter 23 verse 14. When the time came for Jesus to be born, the event found the whole universe activated to make sure that God's supreme plan should be carried out to perfection. Angels swept earthward to alert the shepherds and form the star that guided the wise men from the east. The place had been pinpointed. It had to happen in Bethlehem, as God had foretold through the prophet Micah. "But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting." Micah chapter 5 verse 2. The time had been set with equal deliberation by the prophecy in Daniel chapter 9 verse 25. "Know therefore and understand, that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. And, of course, the manner of this epochal birth had been described 7 centuries before by Isaiah. "A virgin shall conceive, and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14. In amazing detail God foresaw the coming of this holy child. Of all events in history, this was the most meticulously planned. Grown to manhood, Jesus revealed similar vision and purpose. He, too, was always looking ahead. As his brief ministry drew to a close, he assured his disciples that his departure would be all for their good. "Set your troubled hearts at rest," he said to them. "Trust in God always, trust also in me. There are many dwelling places in my Father's house. If it were not so I should have told you, for I am going there on purpose to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I shall come again and receive you to myself, so that where I am you may be also." John chapter 14 verses 1 to 3, NEB. He went away, on purpose. He will return, on purpose. Always he has a purpose, a plan to carry out. Often he carried the disciples' minds forward to that happy day when he will return, not as a babe in a manger, but as King of kings and Lord of lords, coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Luke chapter 21 verse 27. He even told the high priest who sat in judgment on him, "Hereafter shall ye see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power, and coming in the clouds of heaven." Matthew chapter 26 verse 64. As he looked still further ahead to the final day of judgment, he told how the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, and he shall sit upon the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all nations. In that day, he said, those who have been faithful to him will hear these words of welcome. "Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world." Matthew chapter 25 verses 31 to 34. What a revelation was this! The ultimate reward of the righteous was conceived in the mind of God, from the foundation of the world. It was planned from the very beginning, before Adam was created. Even in that far distant time, so remote that we cannot imagine it, God was looking ahead, planning for the final triumph of good over evil and a wonderful future for all who love him. As the Apostle Paul wrote to the Corinthians, "Eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man, the things which God hath prepared for them that love him." 1 Corinthians 2-9. John, the beloved disciple, was given a glimpse of what is in store for the redeemed, and reported seeing a land of beauty and loveliness beyond compare, a land of exquisite happiness and unalloyed bliss, a land where there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain. Revelation chapter 21 verse 4. Thus all along God has been planning far into the future, planning for eternity. And his concern for this world and its people over so long a time should inspire us with confidence in his personal interest in us today. His thoughtfulness reaches through and past the gathering storm to the glorious afterward, whose realization has from time immemorial been his supreme obsession. Because his plans will not, cannot, fail, we may greet the coming crisis with a cheer. Let the storm strike. Let the wild winds blow. What matter? God knows what lies beyond. and he will lead us there. 8. Voice in the dark. Come years ago, an old Christian friend sent me a letter full of good counsel, concluding with the inspiring exhortation, cheer everybody on. Those 3 words were typical of the man's life and character. If he had any troubles or ailments of his own, he never mentioned them, being concerned only with other people's happiness. Gripping your hand and looking into your eyes as though you were the best friend he had in the world, he would say, "Courage, brother," and the radiance of his presence would last for days. God is like that. He talks courage, especially when days are dark, trials are heavy, storm clouds lower, or some difficult and dangerous task needs to be done. 35 centuries ago, an old man of 80 was tending sheep in the wild country of the Sinai Peninsula. His spirit was crushed. Though once heir to the throne of Egypt, he was now a penniless shepherd. He had blundered badly and thrown away what had seemed a golden opportunity. Now he saw nothing ahead but endless wanderings in this wilderness. Suddenly the silence of days, weeks, and months was broken by a voice. Someone was there with him in that vast loneliness. Someone who knew his name, someone who wanted to talk to him. "Moses, Moses," called the voice. It was the voice of God, speaking from the bush that burned but was not consumed. "Come now," he said, "and I will send thee unto Pharaoh." Exodus chapter 3 verse 10. See also verses 4 to 9. Moses declined. He felt totally inadequate for such a task. "I'm no good," he said in effect. "I can't talk. Send somebody else." Then began that long and almost incredible argument between God and a man, with God trying to cheer the man's heart and rekindle the flame of courage in his heart. "Certainly I will be with thee," he said, later adding this 7-fold assurance. "Say unto the children of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will rid you out of their bondage, and I will redeem you with a stretched out arm, and with great judgments, and I will take you to me for a people, and I will be to you a God. And I will bring you in unto the land, concerning the which I did swear to give it to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, and I will give it you for an heritage. I am the Lord." Exodus chapter 6 verses 6 to 8. It was as though he had said, "Courage, Moses, courage. You have nothing to fear. Go on." Finally God prevailed, and Moses, albeit with reluctance, strode back toward Egypt. Every step of the way the voice behind him said, "Courage." And he surely needed it. Arriving in Egypt, he had trouble with his own people. They didn't want him for their leader. He had trouble with Pharaoh, who flatly refused his proposals for evacuation. Again and again his efforts seemed to end in failure. But always the voice said, "Courage. Keep going." It was like this all the way to Canaan, especially at the Red Sea. Within hours after leaving Egypt, it became obvious that he had maneuvered the refugees into the worst possible situation. With mountains on one side and the sea ahead, they were at the mercy of the advancing Egyptians. Night was falling. Panic was spreading. Cries of terror rose from the camp. The whole exodus seemed about to collapse. Moses turned to God. What should he do? The voice spoke again. "Why do you cry to me?" God asked. "Tell the people of Israel to go forward." Exodus chapter 14 verse 15, RSV. It was time for action, not for prayer. "Lift up your rod, and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it," God ordered. Verse 16. What courage it took to do that. Then came the wind. A wild, howling, tempestuous wind, that filled the air with sand, sent clouds hurtling across the sky, and slowly but surely cut a path through the sea. It was a sight to frighten the boldest heart. Especially those foaming, white-crested walls of water which marked the path ahead. Silhouetted against the feeble light of dawn, Moses, his beard and robe buffeted by the gale, waved and called to the people. They couldn't hear what he said for the sound of the wind and waves, but somehow they guessed his message. It was courage. Forward. And forward they went, their terrors quelled by one man's exuberant gallantry. 40 years later, his task accomplished, Moses prepared to relinquish the leadership of Israel to a younger man. Joshua was his chosen successor, and, in the sight of all Israel, he said to him, "Be strong and of a good courage. Fear not, neither be dismayed." He had come a long way from the burning bush, this man who had once been so full of fears. As for Joshua, he was awed by the prospect of having to follow in the footsteps of so great a man. 1,000 doubts and fears crowded into his mind. Would the burden be too heavy for him? Would the people obey him as they had obeyed Moses? How could he hope to capture the mountain strongholds of Palestine with this undisciplined crowd? Then he, too, heard the voice of God. And what a message of courage the Lord had for him. "As I was with Moses," he said, "so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee." Be strong and of a good courage. Only be thou strong and very courageous. Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. Joshua chapter 1 verses 2 to 9. Inspired by this glorious message, Joshua spoke to the people like a man transformed. Prepare you victuals, he ordered, for within 3 days ye shall pass over this Jordan. Verse 11. They did. His spirit was irresistible. Even the river itself disappeared. And no wonder. Through all the dark and trying days ahead, the voice of God kept breathing, courage, until at last the land was conquered and the occupation